All right, yesterday we learned the Dvar Malchut of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is a speech which was given by the Rebbe. When was it? Here it goes. In Yutet Sivan, Tavshin Nun Aleph, 1991. This is like about a year, a little bit more than a year from when. No, I'm sorry. This is like a half a year from the Rebbe had a stroke. Rebbe had a stroke. A little bit more. So the Rebbe spoke in Parshas Malchut. This is what we're learning. So we started yesterday. Remember, we started yesterday. And we said that this week's Torah portion is Ba'alotcha, like we're talking about, that God commands Moses to tell Aaron to light the menorah, the candelabra, which was in the Holy Temple. And we'll talk about that in a moment. We're touching on it in the mimer in the morning. We just finished learning about lighting up the souls and becoming more aware of God. But first of all, the Rebbe points out another interesting thing. This book, there's some people that say that there aren't 5 books of the Torah, that there's 7 books of the Torah. 7 books of the Torah. No, there aren't 2 lost books or something. No. Just a different way of dividing up the books. The Torah is exactly what it is. Right? It begins with the creation of the world, ends with the death of Moses. That's the 5 books of Moses. Some people say there's 7 books. How are there 7 books? That this week's Torah portion that we're learning, Bamidbar, really it contains the end of one book, the 4th book of the Torah ends in the middle of this week's Torah portion. Then there's 2 sentences. Vayhi bin Soharon, that's the 5th book of the Torah. Then from those 2 sentences to the end of the book of Numbers is the 6th book of the Torah. And the last book of the Torah, Deuteronomy, that's the 7th book. So in others, we have Bereshit, Exodus, in English, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Then the book of Numbers is divided into 3 books. 3 books. The first of those 3 books is up to this 2 sentences by Vayhi bin Soharon. The 2 sentences by Vayhi bin Soharon, and the sentence after it, that's another book. From Vayhi bin Soharon to the end of the book of Numbers, that's the 6th book. Wait, pictures of 6th book. Six. And the 7th book, that's the book of Deuteronomy. So that's how says the Rebbe, what is going on? Why do you have to have 7 books of the Torah? What's the whole point of it? Not only that, if you have the 7 books of the Torah, if you want to say it's 7, then it means that this 5th book of the Torah, which are these 2 sentences, that comes out to be the 5th. It comes out to be 2 sentences. So after that starts a bad thing, that the Jewish people were complaining. They're all complaining about God. And that's going to be your 6th book of the Torah, namely this last third of the book of Numbers. The last third, Numbers, it starts off with something bad. You don't usually start things off on a bad note in the Torah. Okay, so why? So the Rebbe said, okay, let's understand this idea. That's our question. Why 7? And why does this division occur in this week's Torah portion? Why? This week's Torah portion. So the Rebbe says, okay, let's understand all this because there's a very deep lesson here for us in our day-to-day life. It's going to change our whole entire, the priorities and what they call it, the paradigms. Okay, the whole thing of the Torah is for teaching. We did this yesterday, but let's go over it. The whole entire thing of the Torah is teaching. And one of the main, and we have to learn the simple messages. The simple message is usually expressed by Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. He's the main commentary on the Torah, because the Torah has to be explained. On face value, you can really come to some terrible conclusions if you don't interpret the Torah properly. I mean, that's basically what all Christianity is just coming to the wrong conclusions, misinterpreting the Torah. So it's very important to have proper interpretations of the Torah. Rashi is like he's the main foundation of all the explanations of the Pentateuch. Okay, so what does he say? He says that this idea of Bahalotcha means that the flame has to go up on its own. Aaron has to light the candle in such a way that he's sure that the flame goes up on its own. He shouldn't remove the match or whatever he puts to it. And we're talking about the flame on the menorah, right, on the candelabra. Shouldn't remove the match until he's sure that the flame is going up on its own. Okay. So what's this talking about now? We don't have a temple. Says the Rebbe, no. Every Jew is a holy temple. And our job is to illuminate the whole entire world. And first of all, in order to do that, we have to illuminate ourselves. And which means that everything that you do in the world has to be either for the sake of God, or has to be even more, has to be connected to God with a feeling. The whole entire physical world has to be brought into the rulership of the creator of the universe, that everything we do is according to what God wants. So also we have to understand that God empowers us to do this. How? Through the Torah. The Torah is called a light. The commandments are called lamp. The Ner mitzvah, the commandments are called a lamp, and the Torah is called the light that comes. Okay, so therefore, every single Jew has to be illuminated, fire, excited, enthusiastic, educated, that we use the Torah in a way that it enlivens us, activates us. And not only to ourselves, but also activating others. That's the whole idea of light, that it also spreads to people that are around us. Good. Okay, but let's go back to the thing that Rashi said. The main, how is this accomplished? That Aaron has to make our enthusiasm, our fire, which is inside of us, to go up on its own, to be independent. Hainu shener mitzvah v'torah or, that namely the fact that the commandments are a lamp and the Torah is like a flame, this has to permeate a person so much that it shines himself up, his soul in the body on its own, so that you don't have to be constantly inspired by anyone else, that you yourself find the inspiration in your own soul. You are, so to speak, in this aspect, you are autonomous. You are autonomous. You are like Abraham. You are like Aaron. You yourself are inspired by the Torah, by the commandments, to be dynamic and to illuminate and be a good example to everything around you. Right, let's understand what Rashi says over here. Rashi says that this flame that Aaron lights, namely the soul of every Jew, and from that the Jewish people illuminate the whole entire world, inspire everybody. But let's start with the Jews first. First of all, the soul it says that it has to go up on its own. Shalahevet, it says Shalahevet Ola Me'aleha. It's a flame that goes up on its own. Shalahevet, a flame, lifnei, because shaner nidlekes, lifnei, I'm sorry, lifnei, before the lamp is lit, yesh no ner, there's a lamp, a clear vessel. Shemen, oil, patila, wick. Right, like a person, before he has love of God, so there's a person, there's all the potential is there. It just doesn't shine. Avodato shel Yehudi, the service of a Jew is not to create something new, just to activate everything that's there. Madlik et ner, to light the lamp. But often shenaseh shalahabit, so that it becomes a flame. Name ner meir, a lamp that shines. Shezohar meir et sviva, that it shines up and illuminates his whole surrounding. V'lo ner katan, not just a small flame. Ela shalahevet, it should be a big flame. Shalahevet means a big flame. So that's number one. You've got everything. You just have to light it, and it should be a big, warm flame. That's why we're in the world. Oled has to go up. Avodah sola here, service to shine. Kishalayevet near mitzvah Torah, or has to be in such a way she'enu mishar lamod b'makomo. The flame doesn't just stay in its place. Ela haratohu mitoch tenua matmeret shalalicha v'aliyah. It has to be in a constant elevation, moving constantly. Malim b'kodesh, like it says, holy things always go up, increase. Nosef al kach, in addition to that, sheyesh no etzelo l'mayla shel halicha, that a person is moving in general. Shehu l'mayla mi amida afilu amida b'tokef. For a person just to survive and to stand in one place and not be moved by the world, this is certainly an accomplishment. But that's not the purpose of the Jews. The purpose of the Jews is to always be increasing. Says the Rebbe, just to be increasing, that's also not enough. Just because we're not standing in one place like the angels do. The angels, it says, have the same service all the time. For us to maintain the same level of service of God, that's an accomplishment. Says the Rebbe, but it's not enough. The accomplishment has to be mahalchim bein ha'omdim. It says in the Haftorah, it says that he was walking between the standing ones. The standing ones, this is the Haftorah of Zechariah. Zechariah is very mysterious. Zechariah, very mysterious. Talks a lot about how God will gather the Jews together. But it's not enough though that you just move and you're not like an angel. You learn Torah, maybe add on a little bit every day, etc. But no, it has to be in a way of olah, elevating. A person can walk in a way which is length, width, namely, but you remain on the same plane. You're the same person. It says that the whole idea of the flame of the soul is to make you a different person, to raise up in a different dimension of service of God. You become a different person. Ola, to go up, means you have to go up from the plane which you are on to be totally different. Look at the world, activate yourself in a totally different way. That's what I mean, shohavet ola, that the flame, and a big flame, it has to not just move, but it has to elevate. And it has to elevate how? Me'aleha, on its own. Namely what? That you don't have to be inspired constantly by others, that automatically becomes your nature. Sheme'ir la'atzmo, that you, by your nature, naturally, you want to inspire others, to influence others in a positive way, to be a good example for others, but you care about your surrounding. Therefore, tzorich liot kol hatanayim. This is what Aaron does. In other words, it makes you crazy. You become not a normal person. A normal person, he's calm, he takes care of himself, he keeps to himself. Right? He reads his newspaper, he has his house, his children, and that's enough. That's enough. Says, okay, maybe enough for everybody else, but it's not enough for you, and especially a Jew. You have to be a flame, a big flame that goes up and constantly. It has to be your nature. So therefore, there has to be all these conditions in order that this lamp should be kli mushar, a proper vessel, that the light should be a powerful light, and it should go up, and it should be on its own. It should be, how do you say, autonomous. By means of this, you have to have a wick, and you have to have oil that is prepared, batel, devoted totally to light up fire. Like it says in simple, Shamishna B'Gamora, and Perakasugya, like it says, B'mem Madlikim, al derech, similarly is in the service of God. Haksharasu Bitla Adam, a person has to be totally surrendered and in harmony with God, Sheyochel Kabel, that he is able to accept, Ulahachil, and to contain this light of the Ner Mitzvah V'Torah Or. In other words, we're here to change the world. That it has to be a flame going up on its own. Aliyah. Okay, so everybody, especially every Jew, has to have this quality. Each one of us is a holy temple, but more exactly, each one of us is a menorah, a lamp, and even more exactly, each one of us is a flame. That the purpose is to illuminate the world. In this type of a service, has to be whether regarding to yourself or whether regarding serving other people or whether working in the world, like we're going to learn soon. Okay, how can you be a flame in regarding to yourself and regarding to others and regarding to the world? A flame in regarding to yourself means Hagam, even though that in the service of a Jew, the Ner Mitzvah Torah, or that the commandments are like a lamp and the Torah is a flame, a light. It begins, it comes from, of course, from God. God inspires us. Also, Horav, a person's background, his family, his education. Like it says, there's two partners with God in order to give birth to a child. There's God and the father and the mother. So this has to permeate a person, his education and also his connection to God, so that it should be shalhavas me'aleha, that he should be independent. Namely, that he's not always waiting to be inspired. Kafish, like it says, Torah or, after and beginning, the person learns Torah and the person receives the Torah and he learns the Torah from his rabbi that teaches him Torah, and in school he learns Torah. But afterwards, a person has to try to work and understand Torah on his own until this is carved into his mind, until it's a way that the Torah is united with him, until the Torah is called on his name, Torah delay. It's my Torah. Until that he's able to find new ideas and to have an influence in the Torah. In more of a general way, that's the whole novelty of the giving of the Torah in Mount Sinai. Well, it's just like there's businessmen, right? A person is in business, he's always in business, he's always thinking new ways to advertise, maybe to make the store a little bit better, maybe to bring more customers, maybe he should have a sale, right? Maybe he should change location, maybe he should do something in order to improve the business. right? How to make the help more loyal to him. Maybe he should raise everybody's wages. Maybe he should take more work. He's always thinking about the business. You wake him up in the middle of the night, and he says something about about his business, right? He knows what he's talking about, right? Wakes up in the middle of the night, says the Coca-Cola, they just dropped their prices by a half. Should we buy? Yes, you should. He knows what you're talking. Well, that's the way it should be with the Torah. There should be so much a part of him that he's thinking about it and working on ideas. In fact, that's the whole idea of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. Even though the Torah was given by means of God, and it was given to the Jewish people, and with the power of God, every Jew is able to learn the Torah, like it says, Balot Chatanerod, like we are just here, that the power of someone else has to light the candles. God gave the Torah. But after God gave the Torah was given in such a way that lo b'shamayim, that it's in our hands. The Torah was given to the Jewish people, souls and bodies, and the judicial court, they have the power to decide laws. Until God himself even said that God comes down, this part's in the Gemara, God comes down and he asks, what is the law in the world? God, he said, there's a whole thing about that God says the law is like this, and the earthly court says the law is like this, and God says, Nitzchuni b'nai nitzchuni, you won. Lo b'shamayim, the Torah is not in heaven. Because the Torah was given into the physical world, and that's what it means that we have to use the Torah. That's the flame goes up on its own. Similar, each and every person, when he learns Torah, the learning of the Torah has to be, you have to repeat things many times. It's like that's what they used to do in the time of the Tanaim, the Amorim. They used to repeat Shona Periko Mea Pamim. It says they used to go over it 100 times. And that was what they used to do until this becomes carved into their mind in such a way that he doesn't have to learn another time. It's automatic. The Torah becomes part of him. Nevertheless, a person has to learn another time. It says, nevertheless, even though you already know it, it says a person that goes over 101 times, not because it's lacking anything, but just to the idea of changing his nature. In order to change his. Similarly, is also the same thing with the commandments. Doing the commandments, it has to be, like we said, like a flame that goes up and it increases all the time. It has to be and it has to be autonomous. It has to come from you, from your own soul is activated. That you really feel it inside of yourself. It's your life. The same thing as the Kadasheru Margila Gufo. That's why it used to be, it was very, very common that when especially in the time of the Inquisition and the Crusades and all this, that Jews refused to leave Judaism. They refused to leave Judaism. They knew that they were going to get killed, but they refused to leave Judaism. It made absolutely no sense. They could have said, okay, you know what, leave me alone. And, and then in quiet and secret, they could have done Torah and the commandments. There were some that did that, but there were a lot of them that didn't. And there was no logic behind it. Because the Jew just felt that it was his life. That Judaism is his very life, not going to heaven, where all these other religions also promised you're going to go to heaven. He's not thinking about going to heaven. And exactly the opposite. The Jews gave their lives to these other religions, like the church or whatever, that these religions were succeeding and the Jews were failing. The Jews were being evicted. They were the underdog. And these other religions, they were right. It was obvious these other religions were right. They were on the winning side. And the Jews were the losers. I thought God is with the Jews. Here you see they're getting expelled from here, expelled from there. Right? The Jews should have said, okay, I guess you guys are right. Made a mistake. No, they said, you can kill me. I'm not going to leave my Judaism. Shema Yisrael, because it didn't make any difference. They were autonomous. The same thing is with the commandments. Is that when a person makes himself accustomed so that the Torah and the commandments become part of his very being. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. We're up to here. word nosaf, right? Nosaf. We'll do this again tomorrow. Al derech zeh, we'll do this. God willing, tomorrow we'll talk about what it means to be a flame that goes up on its own. Now let's learn the Yom Yom. The physical universe is mixed. What do you mean it's mixed? It's a meeting place where God meets with man. Man is the chosen of all of the creations. There's animals, there's fish, there's birds, there's angels. Nevertheless, God chose man. Man is the center of the whole business. Nevertheless, this world is called a garden of nuts. Nuts, and this is, I mean, the fact is a lot of people are nuts. I don't, it is definitely a garden of nuts, but in this case, we're talking about a nut. A nut is something that has a lot of shells to it. If you look, a nut, you ever see like an almond? You ever see an almond tree? So almond tree, and almonds, it looks like a big sort of a big sort of a fuzzy fruit. That's what it looks like. Looks like some sort of a lime or something like that, a bigger, and really that's a shell. You open it, you crack that shell open. I think there's even another shell underneath that. And then you crack that open, you open that, and then there's the hard shell that we see. And then you remove that hard shell from the nut, the hard shell, and there's also like a skin around the, like it's brown skin around the almond. So if so, that's what it says. The word aguz, this whole idea of all the shells around the nut. The word aguz nut is the same numerical value as sin. In other words, this is a garden of nuts. On one hand, the nut has a fruit inside of it that you can eat, it's nourishing. On the other hand, the nut has a big shell around it, that's the majority of the whole business. So a person has the choice. Either you can take the easy way out, you can take the shell, which is around the outside, and not crack and think there's anything else. But that's the whole idea of sin. Sin means taking the easy way out, right? Cheap thrills. God gives man the capacity to choose freely, that you can choose for yourself a path of life. Either you can have the nut or the fruit that's inside of the nut. The whole world is a meeting place between God and man. Choose where you want to go. Have a good day with Moshiach. Now, God willing, 3 o'clock, we're learning Chumash with the explanations.